Hey folks, it's Aaron here again, and I'm with the D175 Strugatsky from the B9 Aerospace pack. And apparently it was recently released, and I saw the video on Scott Manley's YouTube channel, and I thought, wow, this is a fantastic looking plane, and it would also be a fantastic example for what I want to talk about, which is not rocket stability, but aircraft stability. So I'll be showing you this in various different scenarios, and hopefully this is a shorter video than my previous one, but I'll be able to show you basically what the center of lift and center of mass mean on an aircraft and how you can use it to your advantage when making aircraft in Kerbal Space Program. So this is the standard model. It comes with the pack straight out of the box, and oh, it's beautiful. I mean, just look at it. It is a fantastic looking airplane. So it is a standard looking airplane. I mean, it's got, you know, the tube fuselage with the two wings, and then the tail wings and a horizontal tail fin. It's very standard, and I displayed here the center of lift and the center of gravity or center of mass, and you can see a whole lot like our rocket example. The center of pressure is behind your center of gravity. So you notice that with the rocket example, the center of pressure just dragged on the center of mass, and that's what kept it stable, which is a very similar principle that we have here that we're working with. It's actually the exact same principle. The center of pressure is going to be dragging behind the center of gravity, right? So you imagine you're flying along, and you have a handful of streamers, right? Your hand's going to stay still, and the streamers are going to get streamed behind you. And no matter which way the wind's blowing, the streamers are going to go in that direction. So if you know, wherever the wind's blowing on the aircraft, which should always be straight on if the aircraft is flying straight, then the aircraft will fly straight. The center of pressure, center of lift, will drag behind the center of gravity and sort of stabilize the aircraft from going side to side and up and down. And actually, you know, one of the most catastrophic types of stability failures is up and down, and where you topple over yourself. It's bad news. It's all bad news. Bad stability is bad news, and you can't fly it. It's a sad story. Okay, so we got the Strugatsky here, completely stock, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and close the cargo bay, which is another cool feature. I mean, look at that. It's got a cargo bay. That is like the coolest thing. And if you notice too, these things here on the side are actually fuel pods, so you can really configure the fuselage whichever way you want. So it's a narrower looking fuselage with the cargo bays, and then you add these little fuel pods onto the side. It's way cool. I think it's just the coolest thing, and it's great looking. It's fantastic looking. So we'll go ahead and power up, and I'm just going to go ahead and let the controls go. No control input, and we'll see what happens. Now, from my previous tries with this, it just lifts off and everything's fine, and it's as you might predict, right? It's the stock stable example. You see it's lifting off. I'm not even doing anything. It's flying straight. We don't have to do much of anything. And matter of fact, we can start turning around, and it doesn't fall all over itself and fall out of the sky. I don't want to get the landing gear down too. So it's pretty standard airplane, very easy to fly, and it doesn't go out of control. If you tip up too far and too fast, it doesn't tip out of control. If you tip back over, it doesn't tip out of control. The one thing I did notice though is if you start doing barrel rolls, which I wouldn't expect you to do in an aircraft like this, you can see now we start losing airflow over the wings, and now it's toppling all over itself. This is almost unrecoverable. Actually, almost had it there at the end. Anyways, so that's the stock example That's what we call our stable example. Now we'll go back here to the hanger, and as we did with our rocket, we notice again, center of lift is behind the center of gravity. What happens when we put the center of lift on the center of gravity? So we'll go ahead and load another model of this up here again. And you notice the wings on this guy are just a little bit forward than on the previous model. And as we can see, the center of lift is right on top of it. Now, as we learned from the rocket, that doesn't necessarily make this unstable. It's the same thing with an aircraft. It doesn't necessarily make it unstable, but it will make it extremely agile. So we'll go ahead and launch this guy and see if we can do some backflips or throw thousands and thousands of dollars away. Okay, so we got the Strugatsky here with the wings put a little bit further forward. And notice how we didn't touch the tail wings as well. We'll talk about that afterwards, after we get through the next example as well. But the main wings were pushed just a little bit forward so that the total center of lift is pushed just forward enough so that it's right on top of the center of mass. So we'll go ahead and start up. Ooh, I'm going to close the cargo bay. You can't fly with the cargo bay door open. It's impossible. So one thing you'll notice right away, it's going to start pitching up real quick. And there we go. It's pitching. Oh yeah. This thing just wants to rotate around. So one thing we'll realize too, we started turning on the previous plane, and if we turn on this guy, it can do U-turn, you know, no problem, within the bounds of the Kerbal Space Center. I mean, look at that. That's sporty. That's what we call sporty in the aerospace world. And the other thing is, you notice it can fly at much higher angles of attack. So that is basically the airplane's angle with respect to the wind that's flowing across it. And you can basically tell what the wind's direction is by the smoke streams coming off of it. So on the first plane, we couldn't get to that high angles of attack. But this, I mean, you can really see it does want to turn. It's like a giant fighter jet. And you'll notice with this one, same issue. Turns out if you want to do barrel rolls in it, it doesn't turn out very well. But that can be said with all things. I mean, like a car. If you want to do a barrel roll in a car, that probably wouldn't turn out very well. Okay, so we saw that it's very similar to the rocket example, that it is less stable but far more agile. Now we're going to ask ourselves, okay, let's push the center of lift just a little bit forward, a little bit further forward, past the center of gravity, so that now the center of lift is just ahead of the center of gravity. And matter of fact, actually, I'm going to push it just a little bit further forward. And you can see here that it's pretty well ahead now. There's absolutely no denying that. You can see now we add the fuel on and it pushed the center of mass back just a little bit. Now the center of lift is very, very well ahead of the center of gravity. So I expect bad things in our future, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if it actually takes off. So we have the Strugatsky here now, and the main wings are pushed very, very, very far forward, so that it now makes the center of lift, or really the center of where all the air pressure acts on the airplane. We pushed it further forward than the center of mass. So now we expect this to act a whole lot like the reverse pendulum example that I talked about. It's as if you're trying to hold a pendulum upside down. Instead of the pendulum just hanging there and swinging along, we expect the center of pressure to, flip this thing out of control, as if the pendulum would want to flip back down to hanging beneath you instead of being held above you. right. Now let's see how quickly this thing pitches up. Oh, it's right away. It wants to pitch up. Oh, jeez. Yep, this is gone poorly. Hey, did a backflip. And can we get 2? We're gonna go for 3? No, we're definitely not gonna go for 3. So, downside, makes it unstable and practically unflyable. Upside, you do 2 backflips. So, what did we learn here? It's basically the same story with airplanes as it is for rockets. You want your center of pressure behind your center of gravity. So I will go ahead and load the stock file, which has just that. And that's part of the reason why you can fly it so easily, is because it's always stable. It doesn't want to flip back around on you. So we have the stock Strugatsky here. And we ask ourselves, you know, now we come back to that point I made earlier, is the lifting force is pushing up, and it is slightly away from the center of gravity. So you might expect it with the force that's pushing up, that's away from the center of gravity, it's going to want to rotate the whole plane around. Now for aircraft in real life, actually that's the reason why the tail fin is there. The tail fin, or the tail wing, doesn't actually lift upwards like the primary wing does. It actually forces the rear end downwards so that the plane doesn't flip counterclockwise over itself. However, in Kerbal Space Program, the aerodynamics aren't that high fidelity, so you actually don't get that effect too exaggerated. Now I suspect there's other advanced aerodynamics packs out there that would show you that effect, where if you took away this tail wing, if you did this and just threw it away, the whole aircraft, whenever it started to take off, it would actually just topple over itself end to end. I don't have that, and unfortunately I don't have it to show you, but you can start playing around with this, right? You could really create an aircraft now out of anything that lifts, right? So you don't necessarily have to have symmetric wings. You could have a wing on one side, as long as your center of lift is behind your center of gravity, and as long as your thrust vector as well is lined up with your center of gravity. That also helps a very significant amount too. Anyways, this is Aaron again with this is now the aircraft stability tutorial. Signing out. Have a good one.